Good morning. Thought I'd do a little garden walkthrough, June 23rd, 2022. Did one of these a few weeks ago, but just want to show a couple of things that are updated. This bush here is a carmine Goumi, and they've got larger fruit than the average Goumi. Those are getting ripe now, pretty good eating, nice flavor on those. Large fruit, but also kind of a large seed inside. It's been hot and dry here, so some things, the growth is starting to be stunted. This cup plant here was growing great at the beginning, but it might not get too tall this summer because we're in a dry period. So we'll see. It can get 7 or 8 feet in a good year. Another thing to show here, these June berries, serviceberries, are ripe. This is like prime picking. They're almost all ripe now. The birds have been getting quite a lot of them, but there's plenty here for humans to pick too. So that's been awesome to be eating a lot of those and watching the birds enjoy them too. Sorry for taking this in a time of day where there's harsh shadows and bright spots, but hopefully it's not too bad. One little quince fruit on this tree. Probably should bag that so it doesn't just become totally bug eaten. Up here, the catalpas have just finished flowering. I don't know if there's any remnant flowers on these, probably just the very tail end. They don't flower for very long. There's a couple down there, but they're pretty much done. They grow so fast in the spring that whenever we have strong winds or rain, it tends to snap off that tender young growth. And they'll grow, a couple feet in a year, each little branch. Little pawpaw tree here. This area here was totally full of lance leaf coreopsis. These yellow flowers here, those are kind of on their way out. So I've been deadheading some of them so that they'll flower longer, but about a week ago, that was just a riot of flowers. And here's another Goumi bush. This is a more typical size, and this one is red gem. And so you can see the fruit on that. And amazingly, the birds are not eating these. I don't know why. Maybe because there's so many serviceberries and mulberries around. But typically, those used to always get taken before they were even ripe when I had them growing in my yard. So that's nice to see the birds are not stealing them all here. So yeah, just a lot of wildflowers here. There's a young peach tree. As I pan over here, we're in the morning time, so the purple flowers are spiderwort. Those only bloom in the morning, and they kind of close up during the afternoon and evening. Another full serviceberry tree there. Walk up here. You see a little bit of drought stress happening on a few things already. This is a cultivar autumn olive, and you can see it's got some yellowing leaves. So some of these things I've been giving some supplemental water to, and I'll have to continue doing that if it stays dry. I don't want to kill off, new plants that I've got that are expensive cultivars. Pear tree here, it's got a pretty good crop on it. Siberian pea shrub. These little bean pod things are drying up and just about to, once they get dry, they'll shatter. These are they're not tender, but they're not dry. They're kind of in between. Yeah, nice crop of pears. I probably should be thinning some of those off. I did thin a bunch of my peaches because the peach tree, I didn't show it today, but it was totally overbearing. This tree here is a little leaf linden. The flowers, man, those flowers take a while to open. They're not quite open yet, but they're forming and they're just about to open. I think my last video was the peak of bloom for these false indigos. Those are all done flowering now. Now they're starting to make their little seed heads. But there's a lot of those around the garden. So serviceberry up here. You might see little birds coming and going. Hazelnut, 9 bark, hazelnut. There's a wild rose up there, but that's not flowering just yet. Another week or two on that probably. This little leaf linden here, it's not going to have many flowers if it has any. I thought I saw some little flower things starting somewhere, but I'm not. Oh, well, no, not much. I don't know why. It's a very different plant than the one over there. This one, a rabbit ate it down to the ground during its first year, And so it grew up with multiple stems, and it's got about 8 or 10 trunks on it. So my nursery area here, things are growing. I've been watering stuff every day. Got chestnuts, got grape cuttings, more baby chestnuts that are just coming up. Got some hickories and from Oikos and some persimmons from Oikos, a couple big Nanking cherries, some hazelnuts. This bed I've got lots of persimmons from Oikos, some more grape cuttings, and some hazelnuts that rodents planted for me. I didn't plant those, but I always appreciate those when they do that for me. So hedgerow looks fine. Come over to this grow bed. These are all cuttings for the most part. We've got willows growing very well. This cultivar, I think it's Hochberg elderberry, some Nanking cherries, a different cultivar of elderberry that's not growing as vigorously. And these are some cuttings of, or root pieces of clove currant that are growing okay. Another elderberry that's not growing very well. Another willow that is growing well. And then this elderberry here is York. That one's growing quite well. So over here, my water tank area, this persimmon tree did have flowers again this year. The flowers are finished now, or basically finished. Quite a few bees visiting those. The flowers have a nice subtle fragrance. Unfortunately, this is a male tree, so no fruit from this one, but it is growing nicely. And then we've got our golden black raspberries sizing up here. In a few weeks we'll be enjoying those. So I'm going to pan around. I might not go all the way around the whole property today. This elderberry, this is the Hochberg elderberry, that it's the parent of those cuttings that you just saw. Excuse me, these are the flowers are just opening now the last day or so, which is cool. These are beautiful flowers, they smell great. A lot of bee activity on these. Yeah, nice flowers. These are edible. I think I counted, there's probably 80 or more flowers on this one plant. And this is not growing in a very prime spot for a elderberry. They like wetter, richer soil. And this is pretty dry and sandy and poor. So I've been trying to mulch it pretty well and giving it some supplemental water and tea made out of soaking comfrey leaves or nettle leaves in water. So I don't think there's a hell of a lot to show over in this direction at this point. There's some blueberries over there that are developing fruits. Pawpaw trees don't have any fruit this year, although they did flower. Not that much to show over there. It's just some grafts that may have taken. So I'm going to walk over this way to the chestnut area, and the sumacs are flowering. The staghorn sumacs are flowering right now, which is cool. Or they're just about to open. So we'll look at this, the tail end of this white indigo Baptisia species here, just kind of finishing off. Beautiful display on that. More serviceberry abundance. These are just awesome this year. I thought they would not get up to size because normally in most years they don't, but it must be because we had enough rain in the springtime. They turned out okay. So as we come over here, you'll see in the distance there, those are the staghorn sumacs, the fuzzy ones. Look at these birds and see if, I don't know if they'll show up in the video. They're bouncing around getting those service berries. Probably robins. I've seen a lot of robins in there. They really go at them. Okay. We got wild pea, the kind of rambling vine, purple flowers flowering there. That's not something I planted. It just showed up here and I let it grow. So I mowed a couple paths here, but I have not mowed the whole property. You see there's no path mown here, there's no path mown there. I just mowed a couple little paths here. I had a special visitor the other day, Dick Winkle from Winkle Chestnut Farms up near Grand Rapids, came down and visited me, and he looked at some of my chestnut trees with me, and that was an honor to have him and his wife Leslie here visiting. And here's a chestnut tree I got from him. Nice tree. I think this is a grafted tree, my only grafted chestnut tree that's planted out at the moment. But these are just starting to flower. and shed some pollen. So he was showing me, you know, these long catkins are the male flowers, and then these little things here, those are the female, the little things that look like burrs, those are the female flowers. So they don't pollinate themselves. They need another tree nearby. But luckily we've got some other chestnut trees that are big enough to flower now, after many years of waiting. So I'm not gonna walk all the way over there. I think you can sort of see there's a catalpa in the distance that's still flowering up there. Maybe hard to see, but the whitish flowers up high. So chestnut, you know, trying to get these things above the deer browse line has been a challenge, but some of them have finally made it. So now they've got to be past the deer rub stage, and then they'll be graduated to adult tree. This is a chestnut tree I got from Hartman Nursery, I think 10 or 11 years ago. It's flowered multiple times, never really produced any nuts. Not that great of a tree. This is one that I got from Allison, I'm pretty sure. And what's interesting on this one, you can see how two-dimensional this leaf structure is here. As we pan around, all these leaves are in the same plane with each other in that one part of the tree, which is odd. Then it's got another branch coming down here, and then at the top it started kind of going a few different directions, but strange growth pattern. And I'm realizing I'm going to have to, this winter, finally cut down some of these black locust trees. You know, that's what this overstory stuff is here. They've been great, they grow really well, but they're starting to get to the point where they're shading out a bit too much. Some of my target trees, which are the chestnuts mostly here. So some of the biggest ones I will cut down, let the smaller ones grow up, and keep that cycle going so that I'm not, you know, shading myself out too much. Although in these early years, the shade is really a good thing. So here is a wild crab apple, and you can kind of see these are the little crab apples that it bears. Doesn't look very healthy this year. There's not much foliage on this tree. I don't know if it's in decline or what. But then if you look back here, this whole branch here, that has larger apples on it. Probably not showing up well, but that's a graft that I did 4 or 5 years ago. Here's a little graft I did this year that's pushing some growth, or at least one of them is. Laundromat apple. And then I think, yeah, this branch here also is a graft that I did. It's got, you know, fruit that's quite a bit larger than the main tree has. So that mound up ahead there, that is winged sumac. That doesn't flower yet. It's later than staghorn sumac is. It's nice to have them both because they're both great for pollinators and just for wildlife in general. Chestnut coppice area, not doing that well. This is my little pond, test pond. No water in there, of course. It's been way too dry. So we got black locust popping up here everywhere. That stuff will be thinned out because it doesn't need to be here. This wildflower garden coming along pretty well. Got the first pale purple cone flower. Is that right? I might be wrong in that species. Anyway, we got prairie dock back there, some tall coreopsis here. That's rosinweed, spiderwort with the purple flowers, big blue stem. Need to get rid of some of the big blue stem. Probably it's too much in here. There's a 9 bark that's finished. Here we've got black locust, chestnut that looks a little yellow. Maybe that needs some shot of nitrogen somehow. Cup plant. Let's see if cup plant is doing its thing. Okay, it is. So cup plant, they call it cup plant because the leaves are shaped in such a way that they hold water in the little folds like that along the stem. So you'll see little frogs or insects or butterflies drinking that water and making use of it, which makes it a cool wildlife plant. Come over here. Got some large mulberry trees. There are a bunch of mulberry fruits right now, and they are ripe. I don't know if I want to walk over there and show them to you, but that way I've got some good mulberries to pick. These larger trees have pretty much declined to the point where they're not producing anymore. Okay, so coming over here, getting into more chestnut area. I smell the chestnut flowers. This tall tree, that beautiful timber chestnut. Its flowers are not quite open yet, but it's a great looking tree. But over here, these two, I've got two chinkapin chestnuts from Oikos, and these are in full flower. Totally just going for it. And you'll see there's lots of insects on here. There's a little honeybee there. Quite a lot of activity on these. And these are wind pollinated more than they are insect pollinated. So I don't know, I guess the insects are getting something out of it too. But I don't think the trees are necessarily relying on the insects to bring the pollen around. So beautiful trees. These bear small nuts, but you can see you've got, these are the females behind my finger, and then the male. And I'm gonna pan around here. Got another chinkapin chestnut tree. So that's good that these are synced up timing wise, because they should pollinate each other. I think regular chestnut trees can pollinate the chinkapins and vice versa if the timing works out. So there's another excuse me, chestnut behind that, not quite flowering yet. Probably be at the same time as this timber in the background. Cool little spider web. That's neat. It's like a three-dimensional little bowl. This cherry also will have to be limbed up and have some of it cut down this winter. Pardon me. There's my pecan that I opened up some more light for. Still have to stake that up to get it to grow straighter. Got some pawpaws up here. Been giving those some supplemental water because they do not like drought. And I don't want them to die after 8 to 10 years of trying to grow them. Wild apple and grafted apple. Here you can see these are the last year's fruits from these sumacs. These are actually, some of these are hanging on in pretty good condition. I guess the deer couldn't reach those. But these winged sumacs do make a good lemonade like the staghorns do. And they don't have the little irritating hairs on them either. So we're looking south there. Come check out a couple of these grafts. This is a graft from last year, growing pretty well. I need to pick one or the other central leader there. That's an apple, cultivar apple. Here's a pear that Matt and I grafted about a month ago, growing well. Sometimes both buds will take off, so you've got potentially 4 leaders to choose from here. You only really want one. So I'm gonna probably pick the strongest of those. And maybe regraft some of those other branches too later on. But in any case, we've got, I think it's an Ayers pear there, that instead of a whatever woolly pear rootstock. Hearing a lot of bird sounds, and there's a new, or new to me, bird app called Merlin something. It's put out by Cornell University, and some friends had been posting about it on social media, so I downloaded it and tried it, and it was pretty awesome. It listens to what's going on around you, and it identifies birds in real time, so it can tell you, who's singing at any given moment, or which one is the most prominent anyway. There's a couple of tulip poplars there, but I don't feel like they've got flowers yet. I don't know if they're not going to flower this year. I feel like they're big enough to flower, but they're not flowering yet, so I'm not going to walk down there. I planted some new hazelnuts in here. Hearing quite a bit of bird song over in this area. So yeah, I planted about 20 or more, maybe almost 25 new hazelnuts from New Forest Farms nursery this spring. Just trying to plug those in around the property. After that, I think I'll probably be pretty good for hazelnuts. I don't know if I'll need to plant that many more of them out. There's one there, there's one there. Chestnuts are not doing that well. Here's some existing hazelnut bushes. Wild asparagus, there's quite a bit of wild asparagus back here. So this part of the property, there's not as much to see because it wasn't planted as densely. It's got poorer soil, less tree cover, so it's just, everything feels stunted out here. Here's a graft, or 2 grafts that we did, and that one's growing great. This one's growing fine, so we can pick or choose. That's laundromat and laundromat. So this is an apple that has good fruit, growing by the laundromat, or the former laundromat site here in Lawton. So I wanted to graft it at this site and see if it continues to have good fruit, or if that's just a result of its site conditions, the fact that it's growing in a, I don't know, highway basically, with plenty of cars and pollution, so that the pest insects may not come around as much. So here is a American plum tree that I had spaded out from the front when the power lines were being expanded, and it's got a bunch of fruit on it this year, which is cool. A lot of bug problems, plum curculio. These are so small and prolific that I'm not going to bother to come put bags around these things. But this whole mound of green stuff that you see here, that is all American plum. There's also a wild fox grape growing on top of it. And what's exciting is, by putting this tree out here next to it, I've seen the first few fruits forming on that thicket there after 12 years of watching it. So it never had a pollinator before. I should probably bag those fruits to see what those are like, because I've had the fruits off this tree before. They're okay, nothing exceptional. But that is really exciting to me. Here's a serviceberry I transplanted. Wild black cherry that I did not plant, but just letting it grow. Has a bad double trunked form. If I were going to let that grow into a big tree, that would be a problem, but I'm not going to let it grow into a big tree. I'll cut it down sooner or later and coppice it so it'll regrow, but I don't need to have a big cherry tree back here. But it's a nice tree for wildlife. Doesn't have much fruit on it, just a few. My oak savanna area we're in here. Great looking oak there from Oikos. I think that's Bergamble, if I remember right. Looking pretty sparse over here. Got a few black-eyed Susans, some sundrops over there in yellow, more oaks back here. I'm gonna plant some more chestnuts in this empty, wasted space. Originally in my plan or design, this was going to be some evergreens back here. What do we got growing in here? Well, that's a weedy honeysuckle. One of the kind of invasive, dumb honeysuckles growing up under the pine tree. This was going to be just kind of an evergreen nature area because I like evergreens, but I think I'm going to plant chestnuts back here instead because they're more useful. It's a better use of the space. I can go walk around a pine plantation somewhere if I want to have that evergreen experience. Red osier dogwoods here have never grown that well. These have been here probably 9 or 10 years and just barely still alive. Some other ones I planted have done a lot better. My property kind of ends at where that little sign is, and where it's planted out here is kind of the border of my land. So beyond that, you can see kind of what this garden mostly looked like when I got it. It's just sort of this grassy expanse, sort of a wasteland. So I'm slowly trying to reclaim that and get it back toward forest, although I don't want it to be a dense, dark forest of whatever trees. I want it to be an edible, three-dimensional ecosystem of useful trees with some other incidental trees helping along. A lot of persimmons. This is my persimmon planting area. You probably can't see well, but I did cover this whole area pretty much with a good layer of wood chips this spring, which will help them. Hopefully, I've been trying to give them a boost because a lot of them have been out here struggling for a decade and just never amounted to anything. Some beautiful red leaves on these persimmons. On some of the younger growth. I think a lot of these were labeled as red. I know Oikos has at least 1 or 2 trees that have reddish colored fruit. I don't know if that characteristic comes through all the way to the leaves or if that's just kind of the typical younger growth, but really, really pretty. Did have a few flowers on a couple of these this year, which was, some of it was surprising. I want to say maybe this little tree here, which has a strange growth habit, or actually that's 2 trees. I want to say this little one had a few flowers on it, which shocked me at that size. Most of these are not large enough, but I feel like at this point they've been here for so many years. I hope they've got their roots down to the water table and shouldn't need too much more babying for me. That tree there is a decent size. But just a lot of little tiny ones in here still just clinging to life. But I hope in 5 years, you'll see a lot less sun here. You'll see a lot less of this ground layer. It'll start to grow up into a little woodland of persimmons. And I've got some nitrogen fixers in here and some other useful plants to help them along, trying to get rid of the grasses and steer it toward a young forest. Here is field bindweed. I think that's which bindweed this is. It has kind of pretty flowers that look like morning glories. The birds or whoever, whatever wildlife likes to consume those things, seeds, has planted a few dozen of them around the property, which is a little annoying. I've also got ground nut here. I've planted that. Those don't flower till late in summer, if at all. This is a nice persimmon here. This one's probably 12 feet tall, although I don't know that it had any flowers this year. But they're really beautiful trees, really attractive foliage. One of the prettiest trees I think I'm growing. So I'll walk along the hedgerow here a bit, and that's probably gonna pretty much wrap it up for today. Yeah, the big stories at this moment in the season are the serviceberry fruit, Goumi fruit, chestnuts flowering, some other things, other bushes about to flower, like these sumacs, or not these sumacs, but the staghorn sumacs. And yeah, just the struggle, the constant struggle against drought and things dying from being too dry. I really don't like going around and watering stuff. It's not what I want to do with my whole summer. So I'm glad that a lot of these things are getting to the point where they don't need that. Here's a wild grape. I think this would be a riverbank grape. It's fruiting for the first time. I kind of let it sprawl over this Yanking cherry. Yanking cherries did not do well this year. They had a good flowering period, but almost no fruit on them for some reason. And a lot of these have just not done well on my site anyway. They keep declining after so many years. So yeah, that's fine for that bush to be a trellis for the grape right now. See how the grape's fruit is, but those grapes have edible leaves also. You can make dolma from those. I think there's a red osier dogwood that's struggling, a 9 bark that looks okay. Replanted hedgerow here. I did plant a bunch of these wild roses, and this one's going to flower this year. These are just beautiful, and those are in flower in July. The grass, got an early start. Stupid grasses start growing really early in the season. So I've done a little bit of scything around certain things to knock the grass back a little bit and use it as mulch for my plants, but it's a kind of a battle. Grass seems like it wants to outcompete a lot of things on this site. Big mound of wild goose plum. The birds are mad because I scared them out of this serviceberry tree here a second ago by walking up. Yeah, if you want to come pick some serviceberries, you better do it in the next few days because it is prime, but it's going to be past prime. It doesn't last that long. But here you can see there's a little cedar apple rust on a serviceberry, or some kind of rust. Not sure if it's cedar apple exactly. Didn't bother this species that much, but the other species, the one that the birds have planted everywhere here, really had major foliage problems. This one, there's the odd spot here and there, but nothing too major. The other ones are almost totally yellow and pretty sad looking. Black-eyed Susans are just starting to flower. Can start seeing more of those around. But yeah, that's how things look in mid to late June here of this year. Thanks for watching.